Hello, my fellow students of Logic and Truth. I'm Socratic Vet. Let me pose some simple questions. What do we mean when we say justice? What about social justice? Most of us assume we're talking about the same or very similar things. But are we? Or has the meaning been shifted without us noticing? In this video, I'm going to guide us through a series of questions. Questions that help us uncover how the language of justice has been changed and what it could mean for our society going forward. Let's start with definitions, older ones first. Ask yourself, what does fairness require? Should institutions treat people impartially? Should individuals have equal rights and opportunities? If you answered yes, then you're describing classical justice within a Western society. The version rooted in equal treatment under the law. Now consider this. Does fairness require equal outcomes? Most of us would probably say no. Different choices, talents, and circumstances naturally lead to different results. So classical Western views of justice within society focus on and have focused on opportunity, not outcomes. Why? Because it treats individuals, not groups, as the basic unit of society. Now, let's ask some different questions. If two groups end up with different outcomes, what does that automatically mean about the system? Is it unjust? If your instinct was not necessarily, or I would need more data, you're aligned with that classical Western view. But if your instinct is yes, congratulations, you're stepping into the modern activist framework. This newer version of justice within a society assumes disparities reflect structural oppression. Groups, not individuals, are key actors. Justice requires correcting group-level outcomes. And now, you know what? I'm going to go on a tangent because I can't just let this pass, right? Let's talk about intersectionality real quick. I'm not going to ask a question so much as I'm just going to kind of give you what I think. I think the intersectional folks are about 2,000 years late to the party. And here's why. When they talk about oppressor and oppressed, they talk about you can be the oppressor in some facets of life and the oppressed in others. Well, you know what happens when you go way, way down that rabbit hole about as far as you can get? You know what you learn? The individual is the greatest minority. Not a group, not a demographic. One sole human being is the ultimate minority. The individual. We covered it on the last slide, didn't we? So, Western philosophy really started to take roots in Greece 2,000 plus years ago. Intersectionalists are not new, they're not clever. They are at the leading edges of a philosophy that was discovered and chased all the way down the rabbit hole over 2,000 years ago. And then the West built a society on it. And these people are using the infant steps of that philosophy to try to destroy it because they don't know what they're doing. And they didn't study. Let's move on before I go to... I'll get off my soapbox and we'll move on, huh? Here's where confusion often begins. Let me ask you, what's the difference between equality and equity? Do these words mean the same thing? Should they? Are they used interchangeably in debates? Yeah, there's plenty of evidence of that, isn't there? Traditionally, equality has meant sameness. Within societal structures, that means the same access to systems and programs within your society. And equity meant fairness. That means making adjustments for real differences so that people can participate meaningfully. Well, how do we usually do that? Well, boys sports, women's sports. Age groups within sports or other things, right? We break people up into categories where parity is more likely to make for that competitiveness so everybody can enjoy the game. But now consider this question. If equity is redefined to mean equal outcomes, what happens to that older meaning? Doesn't disappear. Does it become overshadowed? And when a familiar word takes on a new meaning, people can talk past each other without realizing it. We see a lot of this in debate nowadays, right? People will say things and they'll just talk right past each other, each one assuming the other means their preferred definition, and then the argument becomes moral rather than factual or theoretical. So ask yourself, when someone says equity, which definition do they mean? And which definition are you hearing? Now, let's get into some intellectual roots of where some of these changes in definitions are coming from. Ask yourself, where does the idea of analyzing society through group conflict come from? Ultimately, you can probably argue the entirety of human history, right? We are a very tribal species. More importantly, where are we getting into this dynamic within the societal structure of this group is oppressed and this group isn't, right? Who first argued that disparities reflect oppression, right? So these kind of build, right? Which thinkers emphasized hidden structures of power? These questions will lead us to Marx and neo-Marxist traditions. Not nowadays here in the US, it's not so much the classical Marxism, right, about abolishing those economic classes. That doesn't really hold well. There's too much economic movement within the populace within the United States and a lot of Western powers, right? So you had to come up with something else. So what do they latch on to? Cultural power, ideology, structural oppression. So here's the key question. If modern activists use these analytical tools to define equity, does it make their ideas Marxist? Or are they just Marxist derived? Which is what many would have you believe if you really corner them, right? If you ask them questions, you put them in the corner where they have to say whether or not they are a communist or a socialist or not, they're going to be like, well, no, he had good ideas and I'm just taking some of them and avoid that third rail. But which are they? Well, let's see if investigating language can help us, right? What happens when a powerful moral word is redefined? Does the public notice? Yes or no? Or does the conversation just shift a little bit, quietly? Is the Overton window being nudged? Critical theorists have long argued that changing language can change society. So when equity is used to mean outcome parity, but the public hears fairness, what will be the result? Well, in debate, you get a rhetorical advantage. So the question becomes, is this confusion accidental or is it predictable? That this is what they will get when they redefine the term. I would say it's predictable. Let me know what you think. And what happens to public debate when people use the same word but mean different things? Well, I kind of alluded to it earlier, right? They can shift it from theory or fact or objective truth to a moral question, right? So instead of how do we best use the resources and the levers of power within our society to promote individual freedom and choice so that people can find their own happiness, right? Which is something this country was supposed to have been found on, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, for me to pursue something which is individual to me, what do you have to do? Your society has to be structured in a way that things get out of my way, not in it. Well, the problem is that's going to innately breed disparity amongst the people. Right? Are there things we could do to protect the people who are really struggling or help the people who are struggling? Absolutely. Absolutely there. And should we? I would argue absolutely. But what they do with that is they try to shift it to, well, you don't want to do this. You don't care about people. You don't think they should be fed. You don't think they should be housed. You don't think they should have medical care. No, that's not what I'm saying. Right? They're making it moral. And because you don't believe with their way, you are immoral. Because you agreed on a definition, because they said a word without clearly defining it. And now they are bludgeoning you morally with it. Because of their rhetorical advantage. Let's move on. So let's bring this all together. has the meaning of justice and social justice been moved within Western society? Has equity shifted from fairness to outcomes? Are these shifts influenced by Marxist-derived theories? Does the language create ambiguity that shapes public perception? And if you've answered yes to these questions, then you've uncovered the core argument. The activist version of equity is not classical Marxism, but it is built on Marxist ideals to push towards a Marxist end within Western societies that do not have the issues of Europe or Asia. And it represents a major shift from opportunity-based justice to outcome-based justice. And because the language sounds familiar, the shift goes unnoticed by the populace at large. The Socratic method teaches us that clarity begins with good questions. And in this video, I hope these questions help us see the landscape a little more clearly. Please leave a comment down below and offer topics you think I should dive into. May your curiosity last and desire to seek truth grow. Socratic Vet, out.